What's a time you quietly sabotaged someone who was trying to ruin you? I had this coworker, Lisa, who spent months trying to get me fired. She'd take credit for my work, twist conversations with management, and even spread rumors about me being unreliable. At first, I tried to confront her, but every time I did, she had a way of flipping it so it looked like I was the problem. So I started quietly documenting everything. Every email, every comment, every little sabotage attempt went into a folder I called The Evidence. I didn't confront her directly. I didn't even hint at it. I just kept a low profile, working harder than ever, letting her make mistakes in plain sight. Then, one day, she claimed she had finalized a client proposal, one I had spent weeks crafting, and sent it off with critical errors. I had saved a backup copy and quietly submitted the correct version before anyone noticed. Her name was still on the document. The client noticed the mistakes and called her out. Management finally started paying attention to the pattern of errors, cross-referencing it with my evidence folder. Within a month, Lisa was moved to a different department. She tried to spin it as a lateral move for experience, but everyone knew I never said a word, never gloated, just kept working. Watching her scramble while I quietly stayed ahead felt satisfying in a way I didn't expect. My ex-girlfriend, Sarah, made it her mission to ruin my life after we broke up. She spread lies about me to my friends, coworkers, and even my family. I knew confronting her publicly would just fuel her drama, so I decided to take a quieter approach. I started documenting every interaction and subtly sharing my truth with people she had manipulated. But here's the key. I didn't accuse her outright. I asked questions, reminded people of inconsistencies in her stories, and slowly seeded doubt. Months later, her web of lies started to unravel. Friends who had believed her confronted her about contradictions. She tried to escalate with more rumors, but by then, most people were skeptical. She eventually isolated herself, thinking everyone was turning against her without me ever saying, "I told you so." The best part. Watching her spiral while I quietly rebuilt my own life felt like the ultimate victory. I didn't need to publicly shame her. I just let the truth do its work. I had a neighbor who seemed friendly but was actually trying to ruin my reputation in our apartment building. She would tell the landlord I was late on rent. I wasn't. Claim I was making noise at odd hours. I was careful, and subtly spread rumors about me. I started keeping logs notes about when she came to my door, videos of events, even timestamps of when I played music or had friends over. But I didn't confront her. I simply adjusted my behavior to make her efforts fail. I made sure I was always punctual with rent, kept quiet during her patrol hours, and even sent anonymous compliments about her to the landlord to confuse her. Eventually, her lies started collapsing on themselves. The landlord stopped taking her seriously because every claim was verifiable as false. She became increasingly frantic, trying to catch me in a lie that didn't exist. By the end, she looked like the petty, paranoid neighbor while I just kept living my life quietly. I once had a boss who made it clear he didn't like me and was actively trying to get me fired. He would assign impossible deadlines, micromanage, and even attempt to sabotage my presentations. Instead of confronting him, I began quietly documenting everything. I also created redundant backups for every project he tried to steal credit on. I didn't argue, I didn't complain, I just let him dig himself into mistakes. One day, he presented a project to the board without reviewing the data I had carefully maintained. It was riddled with errors that only I had caught before. The board questioned him, and suddenly the narrative flipped. My reputation stayed intact while his credibility took a serious hit. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't need it to be. I just quietly made sure the truth always had a chance to win. Watching him squirm while I remained calm was its own reward. My older sister always tried to one-up me, sometimes to the point of sabotaging my personal relationships. She would feed lies about me to friends, distort conversations, and even manipulate family members to think I was the problem. Instead of confronting her directly, I decided to quietly protect my life while letting her ego implode. I stopped sharing personal details, created boundaries, and subtly exposed contradictions in her stories without saying anything direct. A few months later, Friends and family started noticing inconsistencies in her narrative. She became frustrated and started withdrawing from everyone she had tried to manipulate. I didn't celebrate loudly. I just kept living my life, stronger and more confident. She eventually realized that her attempts at sabotage only isolated her, and I got to watch quietly as the consequences unfolded. There was a coworker named Marcus who spread false stories about me, claiming I had stolen ideas and mismanaged projects. He wanted me fired. I didn't respond publicly. Instead, I started quietly documenting his claims and creating a paper trail of my work. When a major client complained about a project, Marcus tried to pin the blame on me. I sent the complete documentation to management, not with anger, not with accusations, just facts. The client reviewed the documents and immediately saw the truth. Marcus was embarrassed, demoted, and I remained in good standing. The best part, I never confronted him directly. I let the evidence speak. Quiet sabotage in this case was about protecting myself. Not humiliating him, but watching him fail while I stayed calm was deeply satisfying. In college, I had a classmate who wanted to make me look bad in front of our professors. She would plant false information, submit my assignments as hers, and tell professors I had plagiarized. I knew if I confronted her directly, it would look like I was overreacting. Instead, I documented everything. I saved all emails, drafts, and timestamps, and quietly built a timeline showing my work's originality. When a major project came due, she tried the same tactic, and I calmly presented my timeline to the professor. She was caught, reprimanded, and I stayed unscathed. I didn't have to publicly shame her. I just let the documented truth reveal itself. At a consulting firm, a partner named Evan tried to poach my clients, claiming I had mismanaged their accounts. He sent emails trying to undermine me subtly and painted himself as the better option. I didn't confront him. Instead, I doubled down on my work, documented every client interaction, and ensured every deliverable was perfect. When one client questioned the conflicting information, I presented clear records, showing that I had been thorough while Evan had manipulated details. The client immediately sided with me. Evan's credibility took a hit, and he stopped trying to take my clients. I never had to say a word publicly. The truth did all the work quietly, and watching him squirm was satisfying. I had a neighbor, Rob, who tried to ruin my reputation in our building. He complained to management about minor noises, claimed I was disruptive, and tried to convince others I was irresponsible. Instead of confronting him directly, I quietly documented everything: videos of noise levels, timestamps, and witnesses. I never accused him of anything. When he escalated to management, I calmly presented the evidence showing my responsible behavior. Management sided with me, and Rob was embarrassed. He backed off completely, trying to act casual, while everyone noticed he had been overzealous and petty. I never had to argue or fight. I let the quiet sabotage of his false accusations speak for itself. So, I was doing freelance photography for a small boutique in my city. I'd spent months building relationships with these clients' fashion shoots, events, tiny campaigns, the works. Then this guy Tom, who befriended me under the guise of mentorship, started reaching out to my clients behind my back, offering them lower rates and subtly implying I was unreliable. I could have blown up and confronted him, but I decided to go quiet, surgical, I guess. I started over-delivering for my clients in ways that Tom couldn't match: bonus shots, faster turnarounds, personalized thank you notes. Then I made sure my work was watermarked subtly, so if he tried to use similar shots or borrow ideas, it would be obvious. Tom started sending these aggressive emails to clients, and because I quietly documented all our communications, I forwarded them, without comment, to my clients alongside my portfolio updates. The clients saw the contrast immediately. He looked desperate. I looked professional. He stopped contacting them. It was funny because he kept bragging to other photographers about how he was gonna take me down. He didn't realize I wasn't even playing in his arena. I was running my own, quietly winning. Okay, so I had this roommate, Mandy, who apparently hated me for no reason. She was telling mutual friends I was messy, unreliable, and secretly lazy, stuff that wasn't true at all. At first, I tried talking to her like a human, but that failed spectacularly. I decided to quietly sabotage her narrative. I started taking videos of my side of the apartment to prove I cleaned regularly, subtly leaving evidence of my chores. Then I made small, clever adjustments, leaving her annoying stuff in evidence spots, leaving notes where she'd see them so it seemed like I was messy, but really it was me manipulating perception. Then I made sure mutual friends witnessed moments where she was doing exactly the stuff she accused me of. It was subtle. She couldn't point fingers at me. Over time, people started questioning her claims and she ended up looking a little unhinged, all while I sat there quietly laughing at my coffee. This is weird, but bear with me. I used to play a competitive online game. There was this guy, Jeff, who tried to ruin my ranking by teaming up against me, trash-talking me, and manipulating other players to kick me from teams. I could have reported him and gotten him banned, but where's the fun in that? Instead, I quietly started learning all the loopholes in the system and created little accidents that would mess with his strategies. I'd subtly bait him into overextending during matches, or swap my own build in a way he didn't notice until it was too late. Other players thought it was just skill or luck. Within a month, he was losing matches constantly, getting frustrated, and I barely had to do anything actively aggressive. I never messaged him. He didn't know it was me. Watching him rage and implode while I casually climbed the leaderboard felt like digital poetry. Ugh. So my cousin, Lila, tried to ruin my engagement by spreading rumors to my extended family that I was manipulative and not ready for marriage. She even made up stories about me I didn't even know existed. I didn't confront her. I just quietly documented everything she said and subtly contradicted her with facts. I sent group texts about the wedding plans, photos, and updates in ways she couldn't twist. When she tried to spin drama, people already had proof of the truth. Eventually, she got called out in a family meeting. No one accused me of anything, but she got caught in her own lies. I didn't even have to say a word publicly. It was just her own web collapsing quietly around her. Watching her squirm silently while I stayed calm was kind of satisfying. Back in high school, this teacher, Mr. Daniels, hated me for no reason. He started accusing me of skipping homework, cheating, and even lying about class participation. My parents weren't entirely sure who to believe, so I knew I had to act. Instead of arguing in class, I quietly documented everything. I took pictures of assignments, kept copies of all work, and saved emails. When he tried to give me detention or a bad grade, I quietly submitted the proof to the principal. He ended up looking like he was overreacting and unfairly targeting me. I got an apology weeks later, and he had to correct my grades. I never yelled. I never made a scene. I just let facts quietly do all the talking. I worked for a small startup, and the CEO decided he didn't like me. He tried to sabotage my projects, moved deadlines to impossible dates, and subtly told clients I was untrustworthy. I didn't confront him directly. I quietly documented every conversation, scheduled every milestone meticulously, and made sure clients received updates and copies of deliverables. Whenever he tried to twist facts, I had proof and could present it calmly. Within a few months, his credibility took a hit. Clients started questioning him, and he had to backtrack repeatedly. I stayed calm, professional, and invisible, letting my quiet preparation speak for itself, watching him panic while I stayed completely composed. Unreal. I planned a surprise birthday party for a mutual friend. One of my so-called friends, Ben, tried to ruin it by leaking the location, spreading lies that I didn't invite half the people, and claiming the event would be a disaster. Instead of confronting him, I subtly moved everything online. I made private messages, double-confirmed guest RSVPs, and ensured every detail had backup plans. He tried to mess with things on the day of, but nothing worked. The party went perfectly. People noticed he was out of the loop and looking foolish. I didn't have to call him out. The chaos he tried to create failed quietly on its own, and everyone celebrated while he just stood there realizing he had no control. I had a freelance editor who tried to claim one of my articles as their own work, emailing the client that I wasn't qualified. I could have exploded in anger, but I decided to quietly sabotage their move. I sent the client the original drafts, timestamps, and all my research notes. I also followed up with additional content and edits that subtly highlighted my expertise. The client saw the full picture. My editor looked ridiculous trying to claim credit, and I got praised for professionalism. I never confronted them. They quietly faded from the project while I kept working. I loved the quiet elegance of the revenge. No drama, just truth doing all the work. I had a neighbor who hated my garden because it was too perfect and started trying to ruin it, moving plants over watering, even letting her dog dig in my flower beds. I didn't confront her. I quietly started documenting everything, and I also began planting certain traps plants that looked delicate but were resilient and self-repairing. Every time she tried to ruin something, it actually thrived. Over time, she became increasingly frustrated, thinking she was sabotaging me, while I quietly enjoyed watching her fail. The garden stayed perfect. She looked ridiculous, and I never had to lift a finger to confront her directly. I worked at a coffee shop, and one barista, Alex, was jealous of my skill and seniority. He spread lies about me taking shortcuts, leaving drinks wrong, and being unfriendly to customers. Management started getting annoyed. Instead of defending myself directly, I documented my shifts, customer compliments, and kept careful logs of drink orders. I subtly trained newer baristas to replicate my quality, so mistakes wouldn't appear on my watch. When management finally reviewed the logs, it was clear Alex had been lying and misrepresenting facts. He got a formal warning. I never confronted him publicly. I just quietly let his own sabotage fail, while I kept earning praise. I joined a local book club hoping to meet new people, but one member, Karen, decided early on that I was too competitive or too opinionated, her words, not mine. She started subtly sabotaging me, misquoting what I said, giving false reviews to the club leader, and whispering that I didn't actually read the books. Instead of confronting her, I quietly played along. I brought small notes with references from the book, subtly dropping them into group discussions, making it impossible for her to twist my words. I also started praising her opinions publicly, which made her overconfident and sloppy. Then came the day we had to present book summaries to the city library's reading committee. Karen tried to misrepresent my summary to make me look bad. I calmly presented my detailed notes and analysis, and the committee immediately recognized the inconsistencies in her claims. By the end of the session, everyone was impressed with my thoroughness. Karen looked rattled. Stumbling over her words, I didn't say anything directly. I just let the preparation, consistency, and quiet work speak. Watching her lose credibility without raising my voice felt incredible. Okay, this one is petty, but trust me, it counts. I had this neighbor, Mark, who decided my reserved parking spot was fair game and tried sneaky tactics to claim it. He'd move my car around, leave notes claiming it was his space, and complain to building management. I didn't confront him directly. I started documenting everything and subtly rearranged the times I parked so there were no overlaps. Then I left my car in visible spots, taking photos when he tried to catch me in violation. Eventually, management realized that the claims were unfounded. Mark ended up getting warnings for harassment, and I quietly maintained my rightful spot. The best part, he was furious, frustrated, and no one had to know I had orchestrated it so subtly. I had this classmate, Sophie, who decided that I was too successful in our writing class and started whispering that I plagiarized my assignments. I could have gone to the teacher, but I wanted to let her unravel herself quietly. I started leaving subtle hints in group emails, references to draft sources and timelines, all verifiable if anyone bothered to check. Then when Sophie tried to expose me, I presented my own carefully documented work without mentioning her. Her lies crumbled instantly. The teacher questioned her credibility, and she ended up with a poor grade for her accusations. I didn't need to confront her directly. Watching her self-destruct quietly while I stayed calm was incredibly satisfying. I bartended at a busy lounge, and this new hire, Liam, decided to make my life miserable. He'd claim I was slow, serve drinks poorly, and even try to sabotage my tips by giving customers misinformation. I didn't confront him directly. Instead, I started documenting drink orders, timing my service meticulously, and subtly training new hires to notice the inconsistencies in his behavior. I also made sure management saw the contrast between my work and his. Within a few weeks, Liam started losing credibility with both customers and staff. Management quietly adjusted responsibilities without mentioning anything dramatic. I didn't gloat. I just kept working while he floundered. Watching him fail quietly while I remained composed felt like perfect revenge. I was freelancing graphic design for small businesses when another designer, Megan, decided I was competition. She tried to get my clients to switch, claiming my work was subpar. I quietly strengthened my relationships. Personalized notes, bonus revisions, proactive communication. I also documented all communications with clients. When she tried to poach a client, I forwarded the conversation and proof of my work. The client immediately sided with me. Megan didn't even realize she'd been quietly outmaneuvered. I didn't say a word publicly, just let her fail while I kept growing my business. Watching her flounder while I quietly thrived was the ultimate satisfaction. My ex, Rob, got jealous when I started a new job after college. He sent subtle lies to my manager about my reliability and attendance. I could have confronted him, but instead, I quietly documented everything, timesheets, emails, and progress reports. When my manager noticed the discrepancies in Rob's claims, I calmly presented the facts without accusation. Rob's credibility took a hit, and I stayed on track at work. I didn't have to explain myself. I let the documentation speak. Watching him lose influence quietly was oddly satisfying. In college, a professor, Dr. Hayes, seemed intent on failing me. He nitpicked every assignment, gave impossible deadlines, and seemed to target me unfairly. I didn't argue. I quietly submitted meticulous work, kept backups, and documented every interaction. I also got peer reviews for my assignments to verify my efforts. Eventually, his bias became obvious to the department head. I stayed under the radar, and my grades reflected my effort, while Dr. Hayes looked petty and vindictive. I worked out at a small local gym, and this woman, Jenna, decided to spread rumors that I was dangerous with equipment, reckless, and inconsiderate. I didn't confront her. Instead, I quietly documented workouts, kept detailed logs, and subtly involved staff in group training sessions. Over time, her complaints were dismissed. Staff noticed inconsistencies in her stories. I never had to call her out publicly. Watching her fizzle out while I kept lifting, training, and improving felt quietly satisfying. Okay, so this happened a few years ago, and it still feels unreal that I pulled it off without ever raising my voice once. My boss at the time, let's call him Mark, absolutely hated that I was good at my job. I wasn't even competitive. But he acted like my competence was a direct attack on him. He started undermining me, slowly giving me impossible deadlines, forgetting to forward important emails, and calling me out in meetings for things he failed to tell me. The turning point was when he scheduled a surprise performance review and basically tried to corner me into quitting. He said things like, "You seem distracted. Clients have complained about you. I just don't think your skill set aligns with our evolving needs." None of these were true, but he said them with that calm, HR-friendly tone that makes your skin crawl. I didn't argue. I just said, "All right, thank you for the feedback." He looked disappointed that I didn't explode, so I decided to quietly dismantle his entire plan. First, I started copying his boss, the director, on every single email I sent that involved deliverables, client communication deadlines, anything that could show how work flowed through our department. Not in a tattletale way, just looping in David per the new tracking guidelines. There were no new guidelines, he never questioned it. Second, I kept an extremely detailed log dates, timestamps, exact quotes. Screenshots of missing attachments he forgot to send. I even kept screen recordings of situations where he contradicted himself or gave unclear instructions. It felt paranoid, but something in my gut told me this would matter later. Third, I started over-communicating with clients politely and transparently, always CCing the director. Stuff like, "Hey Susan," confirming that we're waiting on Mark's approval before proceeding with the final version. Clients hated delays. and Mark loved pretending I was the bottleneck. Fourth, I quietly helped everyone else on the team. I showed coworkers shortcuts, helped them navigate workflows, made templates, shared resources publicly so everyone could see who was doing what. Slowly, the entire department's competence increased except for Mark's. He became the only one in the chain who caused delays, confusion, and mistakes. And the best part, I never mentioned his name. Not once. I just let the evidence accumulate naturally. About 3 months in, something amazing happened. The director emailed Mark, not me, asking why so many approvals were stalled. He CC'd me. I responded with timestamps, polite summaries, and the relevant files. Mark scrambled and replied with, "I thought I had approved this," or "I must have missed this," or "Let me double check." Every reply made him look worse. A month later, the director invited me to a meeting. I thought I was done, but instead he asked me to walk through the department's workflow issues. I presented everything neutrally, no emotion, just facts. The director nodded through the whole thing with this extremely controlled expression. 2 weeks later, Mark was transitioned into a different role, which is corporate speak for fired without the humiliation of being escorted out. Everyone knew what happened. Nobody said anything, not even me. The director offered me Mark's job. I turned it down. I didn't want management, but I accepted a raise and my pick of projects. The best part, on Mark's last day, he tried to shake my hand. He said, "No hard feelings, right?" And I smiled and said, "Of course not." He never knew I quietly dismantled his entire campaign to ruin me using nothing but his own actions exposed under bright lights. It's the quiet victories that hit the hardest. So this happened back when I was living with 2 roommates during grad school. I wasn't supposed to end up in a petty Cold War with one of them, but I swear this guy actively decided he hated me from day one. His name was Tyler, and he was the type of dude who wore gym shorts in winter, drank protein shakes like they were holy water, and thought every problem in the apartment was caused by someone other than him. At first, it was little stuff. He'd accidentally eat my groceries, or forget to clean the pan after cooking, or invite friends over at 1 a.m. on a Tuesday. I let it go because I had bigger things to stress about. But then the sabotage started, and that's when I realized he didn't just dislike me, he wanted me gone. It escalated when I noticed he was turning the heat off before he left for work. In January, in the Midwest, I'd wake up freezing and go check the thermostat only to see it set to 55 degrees. I confronted him politely, and he had the nerve to say, "I didn't do it. Must be a glitch." Dude, a thermostat is not a haunted doll. Then came the noise complaints. Our landlord texted me saying he'd gotten multiple reports of loud music coming from my room, except I literally wasn't home any of those nights. Guess who was home? Tyler. Guess who thought it was funny to blast EDM for 5 minutes and then turn it off right before our landlord walked over? Also, Tyler. The final straw was when my landlord emailed all of us saying someone had reported a strong smell of weed coming from the apartment. I don't smoke. Not even socially, I knew immediately it was Tyler trying to get me flagged so the landlord would use the no tolerance clause in the lease. So I decided fine. If he wanted to play games, I'd play, but quieter, smarter, and without breaking a single rule. First, I bought a little $9 motion-activated camera and hid it in the living room pointed at the thermostat. Not to spy on him, just to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. And lo and behold, Mr. It Must Be a Glitch was turning down the heat every morning and sometimes in the middle of the night. Second, I started saving screenshots. Every text message where he blamed me for things. Every time the landlord sent me a complaint while Tyler wasn't home. Every timestamp where Tyler tried to shift blame. I wasn't building a case, I was building an archive. Third, I decided to be extremely, almost nauseatingly thoughtful. I cleaned the common areas every Sunday. I paid my portion of bills the moment they came in. I bought toilet paper in bulk. I emailed the landlord small maintenance issues before they became big ones. Basically, I became the roommate every landlord dreams of. Meanwhile, Tyler's behavior got sloppier. His friends broke a kitchen chair. Someone punched a dent in the drywall. Dishes started piling up in the sink for days. He left the front door unlocked twice. Each time I took a picture, each time I quietly emailed the landlord with a neutral, "Not sure if this matters but wanted to keep you informed," I wasn't complaining, I was documenting. The bomb dropped when the landlord scheduled a routine inspection. Tyler blew it off, assuming it was no big deal. I, on the other hand, was present polite and had printed my little binder of, "Just so you know, here are the things that happened this year." The landlord's expression while flipping through the pages, priceless. He looked like someone had finally rotated his brain into the correct position. The camera footage of Tyler adjusting the thermostat sealed the deal. The noise timestamps, even better. A week later, the landlord sent a group message saying he was not renewing Tyler's part of the lease due to documented and repeated violations of unit expectations. Tyler absolutely lost it. He accused me of lying, manipulating, setting him up. Everything. I didn't yell back. I didn't even explain myself. I just said, "I've kept records of everything. If you want to talk about it calmly, I'm here." He didn't. He moved out mad. The day he left, he slammed the door so hard the hallway picture fell off the wall. I didn't even flinch. I just picked it up and hung it back up. A week later, the landlord emailed me privately and said, "You handled that situation more professionally than most adults I know. If you ever need a reference, I'll vouch for you." And the apartment was warm again. Quiet, clean, peaceful. Tyler tried to get me out. Instead, he got himself evicted using his own behavior, his own pettiness, and his own arrogance. I didn't sabotage him. I just turned his vents of chaos directly back at him. And honestly, that was the most satisfying silence I've ever lived in.